breakfast puppies?
This podcast contains adult language and content and is meant for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to the Glitterbois.
So the thing is that when we started this, I was just a huge fan with some like high school memories and of, Robotech and Riffs and the Butts edition. And like, oh my God, do you see the Butts on the Butts edition? I mean, because, young kid. So I came into this with like nostalgia and maybe 7 or 8 books read like in my lifetime. And it just occurred to me that once we're done with this, outside of like whoever runs like the fan club or works at Palladium, we are likely to become like experts. We will have read every page of every book. We will have read all the novels. We will have, played hundreds of hours. We will know Palladium in such a way. And it's really weird to like take love, decide you want to do a podcast, and to at the end of it turn back and go, holy crap, I know an awful lot about Palladium games.
Yeah, we started this as fans, wanting to talk about a thing that we're both pretty passionate about, but we're not really experts. We just really enjoyed the games. And I find myself frequently having to tell people this now, that we have people who are listening to us and joining us on Discord or messaging me or us on Facebook or Twitter and whatnot and asking questions. And I sometimes have to preface this by saying, look, man, I am actually not the expert on this. I talk a lot about it, but my expertise is very focused.
Yeah, it's like we don't work for Palladium Games.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are probably better channels that you could ask your question to, but I could definitely give you an educated opinion.
Right. And even amongst the people we know, there are people who are far more educated in Rifts than us, like Buckley, for example. I mean, yeah, I don't even approach his knowledge,
It's fascinating, his knowledge of things, because he is into some very specific things, and of those things he throws himself in fully and becomes an expert on them, even if he can't always enjoy them. And a good example of this, listeners, and Matthew, I don't know if you heard this, but on our other show, Bikers, Dice, and Bars, we did an episode with him, which we called our Irish Whiskey Special. We went over to Buckley's house, and he let us have sips that he had structured in a certain order to talk about various Irish whiskeys from his collection, because he collects them. He goes out of his way and spends a shitload of money to collect rare Irish whiskey. He's allergic to alcohol. He doesn't drink at all, but he can tell you exactly how it tastes. He can tell you everything that you might be experiencing the moment it hits your tongue. And he's the same way when it comes to Rifts.
Is that like keeping a poisonous reptile or spider in your house? It's like, oh no, I know everything about this. No, I never touch it. It'll kill me in a second.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. Perhaps Irish whiskey is his pet tarantula. Although I don't think tarantulas are venomous. So his pet coral snake?
Yeah, or king cobra or something.
Yeah. So
anyway, long story short, there are people who are so much better than us at this.
So much better. And many of them, I think, are on our forums.
Yeah.
People in our Discord know way more than we do.
And like are an active part in the forums. And they correct us all the time. But I think it's interesting that in another, God, how long is this going to take? 5-10 years? 5 years. Let's just say 5 years. I don't know that I got 10 years.
All right. I think that's a conservative estimate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. How much more is there? There's a ton. And they keep making them. That's the thing.
I mean, if you think about it this way, right? If let's say we take the structure that we've applied so far, we've been talking about every book, every rifter, every character class.
Yes.
So if we were to do an episode on every character class, just the character classes alone from Palladium, we'd be doing this as long as we've been playing Palladium games.
Right. So, but let's just say an episode a book, right? Like we will do deep dives into things that interest us.
Sure, 5 years. Why not?
But to do this, we have read every book. We may not have played a game in that setting or done anything, but this is going to give us like this weird, like general overview feel of Palladium. Like we won't be encyclopedic, but like as far as like the flavor of it goes, we will have this like instinctual post-apocalyptic feel to everything.
Yeah, I think the rifts will have hit by the time we're finished. And we will be the foremost experts on how to survive the cataclysm.
And they'll wheel us out in our wheelchairs because we'll be 120.
Yeah, it's actually kind of fascinating because my brain now, certain things that we've done have settled deep into my psyche, related at least to the content matter, of course. But with, for example, the Rift's core book, the Rift's core rules, it's the Butts edition. Like that's what it is now. It's the Butts edition.
Yeah.
And I can talk to people who've never played Rift. I'm sorry, who've never listened to us, but have played Rifts. And I can just be like, yeah, the difference between the Ultimate and the Butts edition is this. And they'll be like, Butts edition? That makes sense. I get you.
If we contribute nothing else to the conversation of Rifts. It's good to know you make a difference with your work.
But it's so burned into my understanding and of the hobby that it's become part of my awareness of the things that I do. Like just the stuff that we have learned now. And it is now so fresh in my mind. Like I could almost recite some of the stuff that I recently read from Rifts Atlantis or from working with the mechanoids and stuff that I'm like, why didn't I play with this stuff when in the 90s?
When I had time. Yeah.
Why did I have this knowledge back then?
Yeah.
There's this, to take this on a total tangent, there is a genre of fiction that has become especially popular thanks to anime, and it's also seeping pretty heavily into a lot of video games. And that genre is called isekai. Are you familiar with it?
Okay. I am not.
The isekai genre ultimately is someone transported from this world to another. Typically, it's in one of two ways. Either they're stuck in a video game, like the Sword Art Online
or Flight of Dragons or
the dot hack games or whatnot. Yeah, there's someone who has the brain of somebody in our reality, but is applying that brain to another reality that they're living in. Or more commonly now, there's somebody who died, was killed in a car accident is the most common method of death at the beginning of an isekai series. And then they are reborn in a fantasy world, but they maintain all of their knowledge from their previous life. So if I were to die right now, or if I were to be transported back in time, to be reborn as myself in that era, fuck, I would know so much shit about Palladium. I would be the best Palladium game master the world has ever known. Someone make an anime about that.
That was a long way to get there, but I appreciate what you did. I appreciate that setup, man. I really do. It is a shame, and not to be too get off my lawn, but it is a shame that now that I have the knowledge, I don't have as much of the time, because there are so many things I've been exposed to through this, which I would love to play. Just so many like campaign settings that we've gone through that I really want to do that. So many interesting characters I've been exposed to that I want to do that. And I don't know, man. I think I got to start making the time. Like I need a weekly game again in my life.
There is a phrase, a colloquialism that we all appreciate for different reasons the older we get, and that phrase is "youth is wasted on the young."
Yeah.
But I believe personally, my view on that is that it has almost nothing to do with having, being more fit and having more energy. For me, it's 100% about time. The time that you have when you are young is wasted on young people.
Yeah, that's why I think so many people are so happy for retirement.
Yeah. The American dream is to, work for 20 years at some humdrum place, but then get a pension. And then finally, in your 50s or 60s or later, you can retire and have all of this time to do all of the things that you wanted to do when you were a kid.
Of course, if you fall over, your hip breaks now. So there's that. But
yeah. So enough of the get off my lawn thing. What have you learned? What are some things over the course of this that stuck in your mind?
That Palladium is not as unapproachable as you think it is. It is just badly organized. Once you see and have been exposed to the underlying order, then you can start picking things out pretty easily. God, what have I learned? There's something for everything. Like any concept you have, it's somewhere in the Palladium games. It's somewhere in the Megaverse.
Agreed. Just as in our last episode, perfect lead in, because we were trying to figure out who would play the Avengers and Rifts. And there's so many different options that we couldn't often find just one.
I've learned that perfect binding lasts longer than most hardcovers that I've seen, or whatever the magazine binding for Palladium is called. Like this conversion book, I swear to God, this has been in some kid's battered old greasy JanSport for the past 30 years that they forgot about. And it's still there. It's still playable. Like the glue isn't cracked. Whatever they did in these, what's it called? Perfect Bound. Didn't we talk about this before?
I don't know if it's exactly what they use, but as somebody who has sold RPGs that I have created through Drive-Thru, through Lightning Source, they use what is called perfect binding. And that's the, the flat square bracket end to the book, essentially, that doesn't really fold. It's got it kind of blossoms when you lay it down on the table kind of thing. That is my preferred method for games of the 8.5 by 11 shape or legal or whatever.
Yeah.
What I will say about that is, although I don't think I have ever had a Palladium book's pages fall out.
That's right. Yeah.
Almost every single one of my old books has a peeling cover.
Yeah.
And that's not perfect binding. That's just the lamination that they use.
Yeah. No, I agree that conversion book and my original Butts edition are both that way. But at the same time, yeah.
I peeled it completely off of my original conversion book.
Uh-huh.
Just fine.
Yeah, everyone. No, I mean, I've learned a lot of like weird things. If you're asking like what I've learned about the game itself, not as much as I wish I had. I think I would have learned almost as much by playing these books. I probably would have learned more.
I think you actually made a really, really solid point. The one that you said about that the game is not as unapproachable as people might think it is.
Yeah.
The more we talk about it, I admit I already kind of felt that way. I'd been feeling that way for a long time, of years of being a fan of Palladium games and going into online role-playing game forums like the Reddit RPG or RPG.net or any other forum that you can think of general RPG discussion. And Rift's Palladium, people are all like, what's the worst thing? And somebody would be like, Rift, can't fucking play it. And I'd always get a little bit like, but. And, I had opinions on this, I've always felt that it was actually a better system than people give it credit for. Doing this show with you, yeah, it has cemented that and given me a lot of foundation from which to finally tell people, actually, you see, there's actually a better system than you think, but
the fidelity is much clearer in Butts Riffs than Ultimate Edition.
I phrase it comically as if I'm mansplaining to somebody who, because, mansplaining is a man saying something to a woman, but the woman clearly knows more about the subject than the man is giving her credit for. I don't think I'm mansplaining in this case. Like, this whole point of this episode is we're becoming eventual experts on this subject. I think I have at least a little bit of credit to tell people that they're wrong about Palladium.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. You know how you can get inculcated to certain belief systems in childhood?
I like that word.
Yeah. It's like, this is how religion keeps getting sold to people. Like, you hit them when they're young.
Yeah.
Well, when I was growing up, there was no internet. There was, no social media. There wasn't anything like that. There was just your friend group. And that was everything you got, and the news and the radio, right? So when I was first learning riffs and Palladium, there was no one to go to. So at that point in my mind, there's a block that's made that said riffs is hard.
Yeah.
And that block has stayed with me for 20 years. And I was just reading over that thing Rex sent us with our old podcast. And a lot of that is that we weren't giving Palladium like its fair shake. And you know what? We weren't. Because it's not hard. We just had a block because we're fucking old and we didn't have all these forums we could go to. So in our brains, it was developed that riffs is hard, or at least in mine. And that Palladium system is crunchy and it's hard to get, but it's really not. And all that you needed was some pretty basic questions answered, which you can do now very easily. In fact, if you wish to do that, please join our Discord and we'll answer all the questions for you. But the point is that this mental block shouldn't exist for people coming into it now, because they can get that clarifications that we never got. And I think that's where the meme riffs hard comes from, old farts like you and me who are, entering our 40s, where we're just, maybe we had access to a BBS, but, there was nothing about Palladium on it.
You just got me thinking. Indirectly, I've always been a person who, okay, I'm going to take the several leaps of logic backward and see if I can get you and our listener to where my brain is at the moment here. The leaps of logic are, it all starts with being a child, specifically in elementary and middle school, who was considered, I passed some apparent tests at some point. And teachers were like, oh, he's gifted. Well, let's put him in the gifted classes. Gifted classes, for the record, are bullshit.
Tell me about it.
Essentially, what the gifted classes mean is, let's go to the gifted class, which means you just do different shit than other students. And it's often a waste of time. And it's so weird that, I could rant about it, but that ultimately happened because I'm extremely ADHD. And one very common aspect of ADHD people that isn't often talked about is your approach to things in life is, it's very similar to something that there was a Dos Equis series of commercials about the most interesting man in the world. And, he did this and he did that. And then he would have a quote and that would be the end of the commercial, Dos Equis. And one of the things that I thought was actually strangely brilliant was, and just so spot on to my life, was, blah, 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 blah. And then it would zoom in on him and it would be, he would have like a moment of wisdom. And his moment of wisdom for this one was, the secret to life is to find the things you are not good at and do not do those things. And that was the whole commercial. And that is what being ADHD is often like, or in the gifted class, whatever. Mm-hmm. Your brain is like, okay, here's the thing that I'm interested in. Am I any good at it? No? Abandoned. Done with it. Move on to the next thing. Find something else. that I can do that I might be good at. Reverse engineering code is something that I am currently good at. I am not a good programmer, but I can reverse engineer code and then develop my own code inspired by that. I do this with computer systems. I've been doing this right now by hosting a couple of video game servers, 100% by following other people's code examples and then reverse engineering that and turning it into my own. And that, I think, ultimately says why I loved Palladium so much as a kid. This is my final point that I'm getting to.
Okay.
Another long story here. My brain likes taking things that it finds fascinating, and if they are a little bit obscure and not necessarily well presented, but I still feel that there is a root of something awesome there, my brain's like, oh, do the thing. And it just leaps in and finds it and breaks it down. And then I flip pages. I think that's why I love Palladium so much, because in middle school, it was something to be deciphered.
It was the mysterious language on the tablet.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Okay, yeah. I've noticed that trait in you as well. Yeah, you do tend to try and find the best way to make the system work.
When I got into putting together podcasts, I had a background in amateur audio engineering, but ultimately, so much of this, the podcasting that I've done and has been like, I am going to find all of the components that I find fascinating and make them work together.
Right. I have always, my way, and I understand what you're saying, but my way is always been lore based. If there's a complete world, a complete role-playing game, if you will, to dive into and to learn the intricacies and the interconnections of that world, the meeting points and the places of confluence, I'm fascinated by it. Anything that's good world building will always grab me because there's so much, right? And Palladium has always been that. Like far more than the Forgotten Realms for me, which is just an endless repackaging.
Yes.
He screamed silently there for about 2 seconds before it came through.
I loved the Forgotten Realms in the 80s. And then I go back to my old Forgotten Realms box set and I look at the content that's in there and then I compare it to what's happened now and I'm like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah. Well, it's because the concepts are right? They have their Moria, they have their Lankmar with Waterdeep and the Underdark. They have all these things that other people have done better. And it's kind of like a primer in fantasy is what the Forgotten Realms are.
Yeah.
Like there's better versions of everything out there that were in fact done first. But this is like the Yahoo Answers version of it.
The Forgotten Realms, from my understanding, was put together by Ed Greenwood to be exactly how you described it. Like it was a way to take a lot of concepts from Tolkienian fiction and put them into Dungeons and Dragons, because as he saw it, Dungeons and Dragons had all of this inspiration from Tolkienian fiction, but none of it was actually there in the fiction.
Yeah. He swiped shamelessly from everywhere, though. I mean, Fritz Leiber, Waterdeep is Lankmar 1,000 times over.
And then you've got Myth Draenor, which is basically Moria, but for elves.
Yeah. It's just, there's just stuff and stuff. But the point is that I have never seen more world building, like literal world building, like world book after world book after world book. As I'm getting more and more physical copies here, I'm looking up and I have, quite a few. But, we have World Book 1, Vampire Kingdoms, and then I have a big blank till 13 where I have Lone Star. And then a real big jump until I get to 33 where I have Northern Gun. I mean, like there is stuff. There is thousands and thousands of pages written. And it gets laughed off. And that bothers me because our generation, who it hit hard because that's when it was released, didn't have the means to get these questions answered beyond, our social circle or sending a self-addressed stamped envelope to wherever the hell Palladium was then with a question written in it.
Something that Palladium does well in that vein is that they keep adding new aspects to the world. Now, we joke a lot, and everybody does, about a lot of the reprinted content, the copy paste of various sections and whatnot. It happens in all of the books. It happens in all of the series. Fantasy lately has been hit with it. I know Rift has been hit with it a lot. Regurgitated material. But to Palladium's credit, they don't do, as you were describing, with the Forgotten Realms. They don't just rewrite the whole damn thing and resell it to you. All of the books that they sell on the same areas are expanded content of those areas. You're not having to buy Rifts North America and then buy it again 10 years later and then buy it again. What you're getting is new stuff adding to elements of the world that haven't been defined up to that point.
Yeah.
And that, I love that. It keeps building upon the old world, and all of that old world stuff is still valid. You can't play Dungeons and Dragons in the Forgotten Realms and bring in stuff from the first box set into the new era because none of it is valid anymore.
No.
The world has changed. But in Rifts, you can go all the way back to Atlantis, and you can take the stuff from that and bring it into modern day, and it's going to work just as well, both narratively and mechanically.
It's like nothing else. It's really kind of hard to talk about because that's a bit of a realization where I'm like, well, hell, I've been thinking all this time that it was just, hard, but it wasn't. And I really think that one of the jobs that Rifts or Palladium books in general should be working on is an update of their website. And I think this should be, and their forum system. And I think this, I know they've tried a thing or two, and they've tried, and I know they're a small company, and they don't, they probably don't have a lot to throw this way. But I think it's the best thing they could do is to make their presence more accessible to the much larger audience that they have now. And like just engage at that point. And if those questions could get answered, the whole trope of Rifts can get just killed. Because people, I know I've gotten tired of buying new systems. I burned out on Warhammer quick because, oh my God, do they do that intentionally? Games Workshop is the devil. But D&D is not all that much better. And I mean, like, even Shadowrun and MechWarrior are on their upteenth million editions.
I am rolling my eyes so hard at that. Yeah.
I can still play goddamn Recon. In Rifts. Now, I have to take a couple creative licenses, but it's doable. This is a time-proof thing that if you can carve a rock with a certain amount of sides and then burn a stick to write on the animal hide, and you have these books, you can play Rifts. You can play this Rift for forever. It's like nothing else out there.
And bringing that back around to the concept of what we've learned. What we have learned is that, yes, Rifts, Palladium, the Megaverse, the systems, they are approachable. They are solid systems. People don't give them enough credit, in my opinion. However, we know why they don't give them enough credit. And as you say, their web presence, their online presence isn't as good as it could be. Now, I will say this. In the last year or so, I want to say since we have started this podcast, somebody at Palladium Books has gotten the hint and started a fantastic online presence with their Twitter account, social media. So on Twitter, at least, their Twitter account is live, and they're constantly doing things. They are posting caption contests. They are engaging with fans. Somebody is there now who is actively engaging with fans online, and that is the way it should be if they want to stay alive.
Yeah.
But something else that we've learned is that, I think we've talked about this in a previous episode, Palladium needs a starter pack that is approachable to brand new players. like, like a starter set, like D&D. D&D got so many people through that starter set. Now, you could say it's through marketing. You could say it's through advertising. Sure, that contributes somewhat. That starter set got so many people hooked. So many other games do starter sets. They sell fantastically. Sean or Kevin, if either of you are listening, we need a Palladium starter set.
Or anyone listening who has their ear.
Yes. Savage Worlds has a starter
agree.
set.
Which does, sorry.
Savage Worlds. Savage Rifts has a starter set. Like, why doesn't actual Palladium,
I'd like that with like a little paper fold out, like maybe map of the CS areas or like a map of Chi-Town. Ooh, I'm starting to design this in my head.
I've been doing it for years. Okay. Welcome to the team.
That's what I've learned of Palladium. I think we had some deep insights. I feel like I need to write you, our listeners, a check for $200 for this Rifts therapy session. I've learned a lot about myself. So thanks.
Well, I mean, to credit our listeners, I think I've learned about the same amount that I've learned through talking with you.
Oh, from
through
them?
People writing us and being like, oh, this is the thing, or offering other perspectives that we're not getting because we're old.
I know I get wildly wrong. I get things wildly wrong, and everyone's actually been fairly polite about it. So.
Oh yeah.
I wish Rifts would get more attention right now, because everyone's like, Savage Worlds or, Fate or, God save us, D&D 5th. And it's just like, this has still been quietly churning along, fleshing out the same world, the same universe, not trying to get your money again for the same characters, but with a different, dice pool. And I love that. And it deserves more than it got, damn it.
It does.
So, yeah.
Where am I going with this?
Freeform, anywhere you want.
Rifts gets a lot of attention, and I don't think it's positive. I think they could turn that table around and make it more positive, because, as you say, people from a former era who approached it with different ideas and are still negative about the experience that they had so long ago. And their friends who haven't even played it have just heard what their friends have said and then are parroting it online. It is as good a game as any other out there.
Better.
Even though it's older. If the OSR can keep regurgitating Dungeons and fucking Dragons first edition and basic edition, which I'm sorry, I even say this as somebody who loves the OSR. I love so many OSR games. It's not a good system. It's just something everybody plays because everybody knows. That's the only reason. The only fucking reason the OSR is so popular is because people know it, and it's easy. It is easy to educate people on because there's so many different versions of it out there. Palladium is its own game. There are no copycats. There are no other systems out there that use the same mechanics. So it's like teaching new people. It's like teaching people a new game, but even though the game's 40 years plus old.
Yeah.
I was going somewhere with this, but I lost my train of thought.
Well, be that as it may, I agree with what you said. It's just, I think a lot of this is just mental inertia, and it's our generation's fault. But I think you and I and people like us and like people like Buckley are trying our bit to bring it back into the light. And like we answer questions. When I get questions addressed to me, I pass them off to Buckley or you because, that's where the questions go. But I just think it's superior. Rifts is superior. Now cover me with vomit.
I need more light. Hey, if anybody gets that reference, please let us know. Thank you.
Yeah, we can be friends if you get that reference. like IRL. Like I'll hit you up on Facebook. Yeah, so that's running long again, but I do feel that it never got its chance, and I feel really lucky because I too, like you were talking about earlier, have a very severe ADHD. And one thing that troubles my sleep and stresses me out is leaving things unfinished. And Rifts and Palladium has always been unfinished. Like, I had the books as a kid, I played a little bit. And then, movement and that and this, that, and the other. And I get to come back and not only finish what I started, but explore so much more deeply by doing this. And I feel great about being able to do that. And I feel very lucky to be able to do that.
If there's something that people can take forward and learn from us, from our experience, from what we've discovered through doing this show, and through continuing to hopefully do this show for a long time until we're old and gray and in diapers and wheelchairs.
Yes, please.
There's a few things that could greatly benefit Palladium, the game, the company, and whatnot. I mentioned the OSR, and one of the benefits of the OSR, of all of these third-party publishers making their own versions of D&D that they claim is classic compatible or old school compatible. And by that way, they say it's compatible with all of the old systems and all of the old modules. And they are. You can grab somebody's OSR hack, the Black Hack. You can grab Lamentations of the Flame Princess. You can grab Swords and Wizardry. You can grab Blood and Treasure. You can grab any of these games that people have made that are their versions of D&D, the old school D&D. And then you can take those old school modules from D&D, the classic ones that we all know and love, and run them in this new system. What has happened as a result of that is that Wizards of the Coast took all of those old modules and made them available for sale online, digitally, Drive-Thru RPG, and has made bank doing this because people have wanted official copies of these old modules. We're old enough that we'll look at this stuff and think, oh man, yeah, I want an official digital copy of fucking Keep on the Borderlands or the Eye of Traldar, or I want a real digital copy of this stuff. And we'll find this new version of D&D that we want to play and then go buy the official old module and convert it ourselves. Palladium hasn't allowed that. However, if they did, they future-proofed their system. If Palladium would allow third parties to create fan versions of the Palladium system, congratulations, you are now increasing your audience. And that audience will then seek out your old stuff, all of which is available for sale on drivethrurpg.com, and they will buy it. They'll be like, oh, here's somebody else's version of the Palladium system. Now we have this OSR-esque Palladium thing. I want to go get the old one supplement for Palladium Fantasy. I want the first edition version, thank you. And I want to convert that into my new system. All right, you're making sales. Your game is alive. Yeah. And then somebody one day is going to be like, my buddy has been running their Palladium system, which is a little bit their hack or something. And they ran me through this adventure called The Place of Magic. And I heard that was in the old ones. I'm going to go buy that and see for myself. Oh, I really like this. Now I'm going to go buy the original core rules, which is available on drivethrurpg.com. And thus the circle completes and Palladium has new fans. It will only help them out. Sean, Kevin, if you're listening, make this happen. rant off. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's just one of the things that I am sad about, though, is some of my favorite Palladium properties, they no longer have licenses to, and that's just not going to be done again. Like, I'm never going to see Robotech on Drive-Thru RPG. It's just not.
Or Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sucks, but it is what it is, you know?
And yet, they could file the serial numbers off and reprint it. They could call it something else. They did exactly that with Ninja Turtles 2nd Edition. They rebranded it as After the Bomb, and boom, they could take all of that stuff from Robotech and simply do a copy paste of the whole document of various words. They could call it Robot Hack.
Or Fast Bots.
Fast Bots.
Because you can't call them Go Bots. They may still have a copyright too, which you can't call Transformers. Which
they could call it Mechatech.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
Mechatech. Yeah, Palladium. Dude, Kevin, Sean, make it happen.
Before this goes out, go get that website. We need
this. All right.
Man, that's all I got. I'm getting hoarse.
I am too. This was
long story short though. Palladium still good. What did I learn? It made me learn about what you can get away with if you have an unconnected child. Like if someone's young and in their formative years, be careful about what the hell you put in their head, you know? Because I always thought Palladium was hard. I came back as an adult. It's not. It's actually painfully easy and well balanced.
I came to this project from the viewpoint of nostalgia, with an expectation of talking about things that I love from my past, that I've experienced, and sharing it with others. What I've learned is that it's not just nostalgia.
Yeah. It has a very real and very vital spot that's still available today.
Yeah.
And
still works.
If it wasn't for the fact that, you know, we were at the BBS stage of the internet back when I was playing, like I wouldn't have that attitude, and neither would my whole generation.
I think my final thoughts on the Palladium system and its future are, well, at least for this episode.
Yeah, we'll be doing another.
One of the things that people, you know, always laugh about when you're running Palladium games, they say, how many house rules are you using? Well, let's look at the OSR, which is crazy successful. The OSR is nothing but other people's house rules published into new games with different titles. But instead of Dungeons and Dragons, it's, you know, altars and amalgamations, or it's some other swords and sorcery. They just take an inspiration from the source material, change a few things, and reprint it as their own. That's no different. Why is that okay? But me running Rifts with house rules is breaking the system? Come on. This is how role-playing games work, people. Palladium is no different than any other game. I don't know any game that I've ever played in or run that did not have house rules. So if running Palladium with house rules is a joke, I'm sorry. I don't get it.
I think there might be something in the human condition that just needs the butt of the joke. You know, but I would like to say that the butt of a joke officially changed about 8 years ago when D&D 4th edition came out. Yeah. They just like, they lost the high ground on that one.
Yeah. And that's why we have Pathfinder. And that's ultimately, I think, why we have the OSR. There was such a disconnect from what was happening that everybody just branched their own ways and took the old D20 license, turned it into something beautiful. Palladium, you can do the same thing.
Now, people have more time on their hands and they're living longer, and nostalgia is bigger than it's ever been. Like this is a great time for you to come back on the scene, and you really bloody well should. So if you just adopted everything we told you to do, everything would be just fine. I doubt that very much, but
I'm hopeful.
I am too, because here's the honest, grim, dark truth. Let's take it Warhammer. An awful lot of Palladium is one guy, and one guy's drive, and one guy's control. And that one guy ain't getting any younger. And there will come a freezing time. And hopefully I'm not around to see it because I eat like crap. But there will come a time where like all of this is tossed, you know, or it's like that driving force is no longer there. And I shudder to think what would happen to Palladium when it was given to the hands of the committee of the people who want to make the money and not the people who have the crazy vision. And yeah, that has given us some bad releases. And yeah, that has given us some fucked up timetables that we like to joke about. And yeah, that has probably given us whatever the hell happened to Robotech Tactics. But it is still one person's driving force of their entire life. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that get destroyed afterwards. So make these changes now. Do it while you can, before some money-hungry committee schmuck does it for you.
I want to be teaching Palladium games to my nephew and niece. I want to be teaching them to their kids when I'm the cool old great uncle. I want to be able to teach it to them and have them still be able to go to a store and buy it on a shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that got melancholic for me. I want to call it here.
Let's call it there. Just one last time, Kevin, Sean, we love what you're doing. Keep doing more of it and make it more accessible.
Yeah. Sorry, it took me 25 years to figure it out. But that early block is a thing. And yeah, I can change my tune on it.
Also, hire me to write your next edition.
Yeah, do it. Hire him. All right. We'll talk to you later, everyone.
Thanks for listening once again. This episode went way longer than expected. But you can catch us on Discord. You can catch us on Twitter. You can catch us on Facebook. But preferably Discord. That's where we're most active. Join us. Hop in. Tell us your favorite stories. We're waiting for you. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to The Glitterbois, a Palladium Books fan podcast. Glitterbois, Rifts, the Megaverse, and all other such topics are the property of Kevin Siembieda and Palladium Books. Please buy all their stuff and help keep them in print and making more games. You can order directly at palladiumbooks.com, and their entire catalog is available digitally at Drive-Thru RPG as well. Our opening music is 8-Bit Bass and Lead by Furby Guy from freesound.org. This closing music is Caravana by Philip Gross, available at freemusicarchive.org. All sound effects used are self-made or acquired via Creative Commons Zero license. If you like what you have heard, find us on Twitter and Facebook as The Glitterbois. That's BOIS. And check us out online at breakfastpuppies.com/glitterboys. And also join us on the Breakfast Puppies Network Discord at breakfastpuppies.com/discord. And if you want to help us out, please spread the word and help us build a community. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Like, I didn't have much. I just thought it would be something easy to wing on, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure it out.
Okay.
Start talking and shit happens.
Right.